Today I'm talking about the star Wormwood hitting the earth, what the book of Revelation says, and I'm interviewing Dr. Tom Horn, who has written the book, The Messenger, and it is about Wormwood hitting the earth potentially in 2029, and he'll be giving you the details on that. And I'll also be answering your questions such as, what about all the recent UFO sightings? What does that mean? I'm Jimmy Evans. Welcome to the Tipping Point Show. Welcome to the Tipping Point Show today. We've got a very, very interesting show today because we're talking about Revelation chapter 8, where Wormwood, the star Wormwood, hits the earth. Now, there is an asteroid headed toward Earth that NASA is talking about. All the experts are talking about it hitting the earth in April of 2029, and that's what this book is about by Thomas Horn. And we have a big interview coming, some in the free portion of the program. The rest of it will be in the subscriber portion after the break. But he's written this book called The Messenger, and this goes into detail now about what the experts are saying, and that is there is an asteroid, a major asteroid on the way to Earth. And many of the leading experts are saying it's going to hit the Earth on April the 13th, 2029. And so Dr. Thomas Horn is going to be talking about what that means related to the end times and when the beginning of the tribulation would occur. So stay tuned for that. Let me just kind of talk us up to the point of the interview with Dr. Horn. I've been talking about the book of Revelation, and there are basically 21 judgments. There are more than that actually in the book of Revelation, but you have the 7 seal judgments, and we've talked about that, the 7 trumpet judgments and the 7 bowl judgments, and they get worse. Now, they start out really bad. Some people ask, does the tribulation begin with, not too much bad stuff happening, and then there's the great tribulation? That Jesus is the one that told us in the middle of the tribulation, when the abomination of desolation occurs, he said the second part of that is great tribulation such as never occurred on the earth. And so the last 3.5 years is definitely worse than the first 3.5 years, but the first 3.5 years are very, very severe. The first seal that is broken, there's a rider on a white horse, that's the Antichrist, and he has a bow, he's making war, he goes out to conquer and to make war. Then there's the rider on the red horse, that's the second seal that's broken. Peace is taken from the earth and men kill each other. Okay. The third seal is the rider on the black horse, and it says that there's famine and starvation. It takes an entire day's wage to buy enough food to survive that day. The fourth seal is broken, and it's the pale horse. A fourth of mankind is killed in different manner, by starvation, by sword, and by wild animals. It's just absolutely awful. The first 4 seals are terrible. The 5th seal is broken, and you have the altar of souls, where the people who have been martyred are asking God, how much longer do we have to wait? And the Lord says to him, there's more coming. There's more people who are going to be martyred. And so you need to wait a little bit longer. What that means is there's going to be mass martyrdom during the tribulation, the Antichrist killing people. Revelation 20 tells us about the people who have been beheaded because they would not worship the beast or take the mark of the beast. So this is mass martyrdom during the tribulation. When the 6th seal is broken, something very interesting happens. And this is kind of a preview of what we're talking about with Wormwood. It says, and I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the rich men, the mighty men, the commanders, every slave and every free man hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? Well, I want to begin. This is talking about the sky growing black, and stars begin to drop like a fig tree drops its figs and all those things. Well, if you saw the movie Greenland, it's a good movie, and it talks about extinction level event that happens when an asteroid hits the Earth. And what you notice in that movie, which is a very realistic movie, is an asteroid is not just one big rock, even though it is ultimately. You have all of these stars, all of these parts of the rock hitting in waves. And so that would be like a fig tree losing its figs. And so we're going to read in just a minute in Revelation chapter 8 now, all of the events, or the first 4 trumpets, are going to sound in Revelation chapter 8. The seals are over. The first 4 trumpets are going to sound, and all of these are the same event. It's all wormwood that is about to hit, that hits, and the effect after it hits. So this is chapter 8. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Then another angel, having a golden censer, came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. And then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there were noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. So the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. So they're about to sound their trumpets, and as each one of them sounds the first 4 trumpets now, this is all talking about the same event. This is the first trumpet. Verse 7, the first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. And 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. So now here comes this asteroid, and it begins to enter Earth's atmosphere. And what happens is the atmosphere becomes superheated. And so just like this star is coming, it's throwing off these parts of it that come in first. That's what it's talking about here. And then everything begins to get burned up. It begins to scorch the earth. Here's the second trumpet, same event. Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. And 1/3 of the sea became blood, and 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. Again, this is part of wormwood. This is part of the asteroid that comes and it strikes the ocean. And when it does, it just devastates the ocean and the sea life in the ocean. Okay, here's the third trumpet. Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on 1/3 of the rivers and 1/3 of the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. 1/3 of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the water because it was bitter. Now you notice that this is affecting 1/3 of the earth. Now, that's a massive amount of geography that this is covering, both in the sea and on the land, and it's making the waters poisoned so that people die when they drink the waters. And now later in Revelation 16, all sea life dies, and all of the waters of the earth are either poisoned or become blood. So the judgment upon the waters is one of the great judgments now. But what you'll notice now in the trumpet judgments, and also or the seal judgments and the trumpet judgments, is it's partial. It's a fourth, it's a third, it's partial. When you get to the bowl judgments of later on in the book of Revelation, it's total. Everyone's affected by those judgments. And so this is the fourth trumpet. Then the fourth angel sounded, and 1/3 of the sun was struck, 1/3 of the moon, 1/3 of the stars, so that 1/3 of them were darkened. 1/3 of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels are about to sound." Let me go back now to the 6th seal and read you what I read you earlier. I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. And the stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. So both in the 6th seal and also here at the 4th trumpet, we're told that the sky grows black. That's exactly what happens when a meteor or an asteroid hits the earth. That magnitude of an asteroid, it throws up all the dust. There's all like Mount St. Helens or something like that. All this dust is thrown up into the atmosphere, and it becomes very dark or black. And so these judgments are describing one event. An asteroid is coming, it begins to superheat the earth, burn up all the green grass, all of that. Then it throws off a part of itself in the ocean, then it hits the earth, and then the sky grows black. So the judgment of Wormwood is a severe judgment that causes great death, great harm. You can understand the level of panic. Now, Dr. Tom Horn is going to join us here, and he had a personal experience that he's going to talk about, a dream that he experienced that then led him to the truth of Apophis. Now, Apophis is what NASA is calling the asteroid that it's on its way here. And there's some level of disagreement that you'll hear him talk about, that NASA is trying to deny that this is going to hit the Earth directly. You can imagine the panic that that would cause if everyone knew this was happening. And by the way, we have sent up a spaceship for the purpose of finding asteroids and trying to blow them up for the purpose of them not even hitting the Earth. And so I personally believe that is in response to Apophis and what NASA is saying right here. So we're going to go right now to this interview by Dr. Tom Horn. NASA has affirmed that there is an asteroid headed toward the Earth. They're calling it Apophis. And they're saying it's going to arrive, was it 2029?
Yeah, Friday the 13th, April 2029. And you may have seen in recent weeks where they're reaffirming something they already did say, and I dealt with it in both the Wormwood Prophecy as well as the new book, The Messenger, in which they're saying that while Apophis is going to make a very, very close miss of the Earth, they are saying that right now they're calling an all clear, saying that it's not going to impact the planet. Now, this is something that your listeners need to really pay attention to. There are numerous scientists that reacted to their most recent all clear, warning that the trajectory that they have made, their calculation of Apophis, is off by as much as 600,000 miles.
Good.
In fact, the mathematician Harry Lear, he implies that Apophis is going to crash into Earth in 8 years from now, and he even went so far as to send a letter to the President of the United States begging him to have the U.S. government scientists cross-check those calculations immediately, because he says that NASA's either playing a game with the trajectory stats, or they are just they're intentionally misleading the public. And then he ends his letter. Anybody can log online and read his letter. He ends that dispatch with this ominous admonition that he thinks we're already out of time anyway. But maybe if we got on it now, and I think behind the scenes they are on it now, I think it's part of the reason Space Force was formed, that they're trying to figure out how they might be able to mitigate this incoming event. But it's not just Lear. Nathan Myhrvold, who was the head of Microsoft, the science department for Microsoft for many years, he is consistently listed every year in the top 100 scientists in the world. And he recently wrote a peer-reviewed paper that I referred to in the books called An Empirical Examination of Wise, Neo-Wise Asteroid Analysis and Results, in which he not only refutes a lot of the data from NASA, he charges them outright with deliberately misreporting threats by these near-Earth objects and of behaving extremely deceptively with deliberate scientific misconduct. So in other words, he is saying this wasn't an accident on part. They are going out of their way to intentionally cover up very real, potentially imminent space threats, including Apophis. And then there's a video on YouTube that anybody can watch right now that's got the famous planetary scientist and the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, very popular figure. And he says that on April 13, 2029, I'll quote, this is from the YouTube video, this is a quote, Apophis will come so close to Earth that it will dip below our orbiting communication satellites. It will be the largest, closest thing we have ever observed to come by Earth. The orbit we have for it now is uncertain because these things are hard to measure and hard to get an exact distance for, so we cannot tell you exactly what that trajectory will be. So, and this was the same thing that the astronomer from the Pentagon told me. He said it's absolutely baloney. Well, he used a different word that I won't use. But he said it's absolute baloney. He said you can't say that a stone as big as Apophis, and it's a monster, is going to come literally below the satellites, knock out some of the satellites, below the satellites that are in orbit around this planet, and yet say with any certitude, but no worry, it's not going to strike the planet. He said that's absolute baloney. Watch the movie Greenland, where right up until and so you know that in the beginning, NASA, they're all saying, no worries, it's just going to skim past, no big deal, take pictures, draw cartoon pictures of it. And then all of a sudden, everybody starts heading for cover. And that is what many of these people believe is going to happen with Apophis. Now, why would NASA be covering that up? Well, it's really obvious, because it would create mass panic. And maybe meanwhile, they might come up with some way to mitigate the incoming of that asteroid.
They're sending a spaceship up right now to blast an asteroid. They announced
they are.
Yeah.
That's exactly right, and that's the reason why they are doing that.
Well, that's a fascinating interview. I hope that you enjoyed that. Now, we have more of it coming, about 10 more minutes of that interview coming up in the subscriber portion. If you're not a subscriber, please become a subscriber. endtimes.com is where you go to subscribe. It's $7 a month, $77 a year. As a monthly subscriber, you get the first month for free. So if you want to just check it out, become a monthly subscriber. It's free for the first month. If you don't want to continue, fine. And if you do, that's great also. But become a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, I'm going to say goodbye to you. If you are a subscriber, we're going to take a short break here, and we'll be back with more of the interview from Dr. Tom Horn, and I'm also answering questions.
Apophis, this thing was discovered in 2004. It's 370 meters across, over 1,200 feet. So in other words, 4 football fields, NFL football fields. It weighs 20 million metric tons. It's traveling at 28,000 miles per hour.
Goodness.
And NASA did admit, and it's on their website, that if it does impact the Earth, Friday the 13th, April 2029, and what a date, right? Friday the 13th. They say that it will be equivalent to over 1 billion tons of TNT.
Wow.
In other words, 65,000 of the bombs that we dropped on Hiroshima, sinking the Japanese island of Nagasaki at the end of World War II, all going off all at one time in one place.
Wow.
Another NASA calculator says that it's equivalent to every nuclear warhead that's on the face of the Earth today. Everything owned by the United States, China, Britain, Israel, all of them, all at one time, going off all in one place. It could literally crack the mantle of the Earth. And the other thing that NASA says, which people need to think about, is that they say if it does strike the Earth in 2029, it most likely is going to come down along the coastline of California and Old Mexico. So first of all, that's a highly densely populated area. But secondly, that's also the tip of the Cascadia subduction zone, where you have a dozen of the most powerful volcanoes on Earth.
Wow.
That could literally be triggered like dominoes, one after the other, and maybe that too plays a role in what darkens out the sun and the moon. A third part of it, the stars, in the book of Revelation, chapter 8.
You're pre-trib like me, so you believe that Jesus is going to return for his church before the tribulation begins.
I do, and by the way, that also is something that really intrigued me. So you have to understand, I get these glimpses of things, and I start writing about them before I even know what I'm talking about. So, for instance, the Cascadia subduction zone, that was not even in my mind, but the vision that I saw, me on a hill, running with thousands of other people screaming, and all these people are screaming for God to deliver them, when this thing impacts the Earth. And something comes down under my arms, lifts me up above, because there's a giant tsunami coming over this hill we're running on, and I know we're not going to survive it, but something lifts me up so my point of view changes, and now I'm looking down. And I see all of this massive debris that is coming up into the upper atmosphere, getting caught into the jet stream, going around the Earth. Once again, I guess I'm just as dumb as a $2 bill. I had not put together this idea with the Cascadia subduction zone. That was Steve Quayle. I was doing a show with him, and I was explaining what I saw. And as soon as I said NASA says it would likely come down on the coastline of California and Old Mexico, it was Steve that jumped in and he said, well, Tom, that's the tip of the Cascadia subduction zone. That'd be the most dangerous place on Earth for an asteroid of that size to strike, because you have 12 monster volcanoes that keep, geologists up at night. And so, but what I was going to say was this. So I was doing a program, and this one happened to be on SkyWatch, my own TV show, when the book The Wormwood Prophecy came out. And I was explaining to Derek and Sharon Gilbert how that if I'm right, if Apophis is a biblical wormwood, that some people then would see the date given by NASA in 2029 as the middle of the tribulation period, because that's when the trumpet judgments begin.
Right.
And as I'm explaining this, and I'm saying, so therefore some people might take NASA's date and back up 3.5 years to see if they could discover the approximate start date for the Great Tribulation period. Well, as I'm saying that, Derek is sitting over there, and he's got an iPad open in front of him, and I don't know what he's doing, and I can see his eyes light up, right? And so right in the program, he says, Tom, he said, I just opened a Hebrew calendar, and guess what? Take NASA's date for the arrival of Apophis, Friday the 13th, April 2029, and back up 3.5 years to the day, and you are in the middle of the Feast of Tabernacles.
Wow.
Now, prophecy experts would immediately understand why that could be significant, because the Feast of Tabernacles was the ancient feast where the Hebrews were required to travel from all over the Middle East to the Temple Mount. They would set up their tents around the Temple Mount where the house of God is. But on the and 3.5 years earlier from Apophis is not only the middle of Tabernacles, it's the 5th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, and that is the exact day that the ancient Hebrews would celebrate and offer offerings to God for delivering them during the Exodus from the gods of Egypt, Apophis being the primary god of darkness that battled the light. That's the very day they celebrated that deliverance. So, I mean, he said that, and it took me a few minutes to wrap my mind around the fact that the very day we celebrate deliverance from Apophis 3.5 years earlier. What a perfect picture for the rapture, Jimmy.
Oh, yeah.
We celebrate deliverance from Apophis 3.5 years, literally to the day before the arrival of the asteroid Apophis. So this was mind-bending, but then one thing started adding to the next. We stayed in the Hebrew calendar. 10 days earlier is the Feast of Trumpets, which many people connect to the rapture of the church too, because of Paul writing to the church at Thessalonica, for the trumpets shall sound, and at the last trump, we which are alive and remain shall be caught up in the air to meet them with the Lord. But 120 days before that is the Feast of Pentecost.
Wow.
And first of all, the number 120 is the biblical numerology for the end of man. My spirit shall not always strive as man, for his days shall be 120. Moses was a type of that. He lived 120 years. Right. But also during the Feast of Pentecost, the Orthodox Jews believe that during the Feast of Pentecost, and they do not know the day or the hour, but they believe that during the Feast of Pentecost, there is a moment in which the window of heaven opens, into which individuals could enter into or exit from the kingdom of God, from the kingdom of heaven. That's what the Orthodox Jews believe, that sometime during the Feast of Pentecost, that window could open. So what am I saying? I'm saying there's a 120-day spread in the year 2025 that all three of those high holy Jewish feast days are connected by prophecy scholars with the second coming and with the rapture of the church.
Wow.
And it isn't just that. There's the whole book, the Messenger, and including my next book, Zeitgeist 2025, all went about to look into all of the material in 2025 that just seems to be so unusual, Jimmy. It does make me believe. Now, this is Tom Horn, folks. This is not Jimmy Evans. Tom Horn has come to believe that it's more likely than not that 2025 does represent the beginning of the tribulation period, and we'll wait and see if I'm right.
I absolutely love it. I love the fact that, you know, God gave you this revelation that you've been consistent with, just like the prophecy of the popes, but it's come true. And now you're saying this about the, you know, vision you had of, you know, running terrified with all these thousands of people. But it lines up with what science is saying, and that is there is an asteroid, massive asteroid, approaching the Earth. They're downplaying it. I did watch the movie Greenland. Everyone needs to watch that movie. Good, clean movie, but it is terrifying in the sense is it's an asteroid hitting the Earth, and they do an extremely good job of illustrating what would happen to the Earth. Let me say, Jesus said concerning the abomination of desolation, if Apophis hits the Earth, 3.5 years into the tribulation, Jesus said, there will be great tribulation come upon the earth, such as not has happened in the history of the world. And if those days had not been cut short, no flesh would have survived. So immediately after the abomination of desolation, in fact, literally the abomination of desolation, when the Antichrist goes into a rebuilt temple and proclaims himself God, literally at that point, all hell breaks loose. And if Apophis hit the earth at that point in time, it would be, and that's what looks like it's going to happen, is that and then you back up, so that's consistent with what Jesus said, then you back up 3.5 years and you're in the period of all the high holy days, which I believe are a prophetic grid of what's going to happen. There's no doubt about it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Dr. Thomas Horn wrote the book, The Messenger. If you don't have this book, this is where the details are. And let me tell you, we're not going to be here when Wormwood hits the earth. And so let me just comfort everybody by, after the interview, you may be worried. I'd obviously be worried for anyone who's unsaved, who's going to be here, because it's going to be a disastrous event for the earth, just like everything else that happens during the tribulation. But let me now answer some questions. This is the one about UFOs here. This is from Lisa. Many military pilots are reporting UFOs and other unexplained phenomena. Is there any biblical correlation to extraterrestrial beings? Does this have anything to do with the end times? I believe it does, Lisa, and that's a fascinating question. Many very well documented evidences are coming out that there are UFOs that defy all laws of physics and all laws of gravity. And so the Navy pilots that had the most sophisticated cameras on Earth recording these UFOs, they're flying at unbelievable speeds, turning on a dime, stopping on a dime, all of those things like that, which cannot be done by any known technology on the Earth. So what is this? That's the question. Are these actually extraterrestrials that are coming from other places in the universe? I don't believe they are. Here's what I personally believe. Now, there have been reports, millions and millions of reports for decades around the world of people being abducted by aliens. Now, this is very well documented. I'm sure you've seen some of these. These people are not crazy. Now, I'm sure some of them are mentally unstable. There's no doubt about that. But I have seen the personal testimony of many people. Dr. Thomas Horn's sister was abducted until she got saved. When people get saved, they don't get abducted anymore. It's unsaved people. But you see these people being abducted, they always say that there are beings that show up in their room or the car or wherever they are when they are abducted. They're taken into a spacecraft somewhere, and that they are operated on their reproductive area. Okay, that's very interesting. And the interesting part about that is that, first of all, Jesus said there will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. Revelation 13, when it talks about the false prophet, it says he calls fire down from heaven and does great miracles and wonders in the presence of the beast so that the world worships him. And the question could be, does he appear as an extraterrestrial? Does he appear as a hybrid? And so during the days of Noah, Jesus says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Remember, in the days of Noah, Genesis 6, it says there were Nephilim on the earth in those days, and afterwards also. It's talking about before the flood, and after the flood there were Nephilim. Well, the word Nephilim means fallen one. These are the product of angels, fallen angels, having sexual relations with human women. and they had these extraordinary beings. Goliath, the Bible tells us how tall Goliath was. He was 9 feet 9 inches tall, and that was a span, or from tip of your fingers to a cubit to your elbow. And it tells us exactly how tall he was. At the most conservative measurement, he was 9 feet 9 inches tall. Og, king of Bashan, his bed was 13 feet long. These were big men. And so when the children of Israel went into the promised land to take the promised land, they came out, the spies came out, and they said, we were like grasshoppers compared to those people. They're so enormous. So these are not normal human beings. These are hybrids. And so the Bible says, Jesus says, as it was in the days of Noah. And by the way, the reason that God destroyed the earth was because of the corrupted seed. The Bible says that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, but he was perfect in his generations. Well, was he perfect, or did he need grace? Because perfect people don't need grace. He needed grace. He was an imperfect person, but his genetics were perfect. He had not been corrupted by that serpent seed. And so today we have transhumanism. We have chimeras all around the world. Almost every government in the world now is creating human-animal chimeras, hybrids. We have the human seed being mixed with animal seed all over the world, and they say they're doing it in the name of science and all that kind of stuff. And maybe they are, but the human seed is sacred. It should not be mixed with animal seed. But we also have the transhumanism, and Ray Kurzweil, who is the chief engineer for Google, says by 2030, humans will be hybrids. Elon Musk has this Neuralink company, and they're putting these transmitters in brains. They've done it with monkeys. They're doing it with humans so that you can augment your brain. And what Elon Musk says is, we cannot let AI outpace us. We have to interface our brains with software so that we can have that kind of knowledge, that our brains are now interfaced, and we literally are on the cloud. Your brain is on the cloud, so you have unlimited knowledge as a human that can keep up with AI. In fact, they're saying when this becomes common, your children won't be able to go to school if they don't have this augmentation, because they won't be able to keep up with the other students. So this is going to become commonplace as time goes on. But I'm going to go back to the aliens. Why would aliens come and abduct people and do experiments on their sexual organs? Okay, well, first of all, they're not aliens. They're demons. I believe that this is demonic. I truly believe it's demonic. And I believe that these abductions are real. I believe that people are being taken. I believe that their sexuality is being stolen from them for the purpose of making hybrids. Okay, this is what got us in trouble when God destroyed the earth in the flood, was demonic entities mating with human beings, creating a hybrid race. Some people think there may be hybrids right now walking up down the street that we don't know. I don't know about that. But let me go to the second question here from Monica. Monica says, what do you think will be the excuse the government gives for why people disappeared when the rapture happens? Well, Monica, that's a great question. Let me answer it this way. What do you think would happen if the rapture occurred at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, one day, and at 3:01, UFOs appeared, just visibly appeared? You've seen it in the movies, that all of a sudden around the world there were UFOs. What would get the attention? Would it be the UFOs or the rapture? And I'm saying it'd be both, but the UFOs would get the most attention. And then the aliens that come, the demonic entities that come, and the Antichrist could be one of them. We don't know. But the demonic entities that come, they say to the inhabitants of the world, we put you here. We are your creators. We put you here. By the way, Dr. Thomas Horn also wrote a book about the Catholics. The Catholics have an observatory on Mount Graham in Arizona. They have an infrared telescope named Lucifer. This is all true. And this is documented by the Vatican. And they are watching, they say that they are watching something headed our way. And when it gets here, they're going to save us. They're going to be baptizing us and saving us. We won't be baptizing them and saving them. And they're going to give us a new understanding of our religion. This is what the official Vatican statement says. It's documented by Dr. Thomas Horn. So there's all this stuff happening with UFOs, with aliens, and all those kinds of things like that. And so one of the lead scientists in Israel said openly last year that the United States government and the Israeli government has been in open contact with aliens during the Trump administration, and that we have kept it silent because we didn't want to cause public panic. So I believe that there are aliens that are demonic entities. I believe that there has probably been contact. We certainly have extremely graphic UFO data. But think for just a minute about what would happen if the rapture and the revelation of the UFOs happened at the same time. And the aliens come and they say, well, we're here, we put you here, but it's time for you to evolve, and we're here to help you evolve. Now, all those Christians that just disappeared, we got rid of them because they're old-minded. We can't help them. They're keeping you from evolving. So they're all gone. We got rid of them, but we're going to help you. And the world then begins to follow them, or begins to follow the Antichrist, whatever it is. Is that going to happen? I don't know. It might not. But I do believe in UFOs. I believe they're demonic. And I do believe in the accounts of people being abducted. I think they're believable. I think that many of them are very intelligent people who don't want attention, and they wish this didn't happen to them. But it is a common occurrence. So we're just living in a time that's just absolutely fascinating related to what's happening in the world today. So we talked today about Wormwood. We talked about UFOs and aliens and all that stuff. Very fascinating stuff. I hope it was helpful for you. I'll see you next time on Tipping Point.